So the next game on our list of Disney games that made my childhood infinitely more traumatic happens to be Disney's Aladdin. Now, to be realistic here, Aladdin's probably one of the best Disney games there is, especially on the Genesis, for a few reasons. Number one, it's actually an enjoyable experience for all ages. I mean, it's a very action-oriented game on the Genesis, so it's a lot more fun for older gamers to play than, say, Jungle Book, which feels geared more towards children, which may be more appropriate considering the source material. But you know what? I'm not going to go there yet. Another thing I think is important to mention is that this game was actually done by the same team that would later do Earthworm Jim, which probably goes to show why the game is so good. Another thing I should point out is that the Genesis version of Aladdin is actually very, very different from the Super Nintendo version. I'd never played the Super Nintendo version, nor have I seen enough gameplay to really judge it properly, but I will tell you that the Super Nintendo version was done by Capcom while the Genesis version was still done by Virgin, like most Disney games on the Genesis. The reason for that, if you care, is because Capcom still had the rights at this point to create Disney games on Nintendo consoles. That's why Disney got away with having Virgin do the Genesis version, but Capcom still had the rights to make the game for the Super Nintendo, so they had to let Capcom do it. But enough fun facts for today, let's get into the actual game. The game has a much better storytelling aspect than Jungle Book did, which is very vague, but it also differs from the movie storyline way more than Jungle Book ever did. So you're gonna notice quite a few differences. I mean, it's loosely based on it, and you go to the same locations for the most part, but what actually happens and how things turn out and how things go, really the game starts out the same and the end result is the same as the movie, but the middle part, there's a few changes. I think this was done to make the game feel like it was flowing better, because translating Aladdin to nothing but action in terms of gameplay is a little bit difficult, to be fair, and the changes aren't significant enough for me to care that much. Level 1 is the Agrabah Market. This is where you get introduced to most of the gameplay mechanics, and the first level is pretty easy. Aladdin has a sword, and he can also throw apples. You can actually run out of apples, but that's your only ranged attack, and you're probably going to be using that a lot in the later levels, because if you're close enough to hit an enemy, they're close enough to hit you. Unless, of course, they have a ranged attack, in which case they're just going to piss you off. One thing I do like a bit more about this game when compared to, say, Jungle Book, is that every single collectible does something. You collect apples to obviously improve the number of apples you can throw. You collect gems to use in the shop, more on that later. You collect extra lives, you can collect an Abu icon, which is for a mini game that happens, which I will explain in a little bit, and blue hearts to improve your health. It's pretty standard, and it works quite well for the game. I appreciate that every single collectible is useful for something. The first level is pretty standard for the most part. You're introduced to a lot of the enemy types you'll be fighting along the way, and you're introduced to a lot of the elements about the game, such as the shop, which is on the main path in this level. It is not in the later ones, you actually have to look for it. In the shop, you can use the gems you collect to buy either extra lives or continues. Believe me, if you're playing the game, especially on hard mode, you're going to want to spam buying continues, because you're going to be using them a lot if you're playing the game fairly. But more on that later. I should also mention that in the first level, you'll immediately notice that the game has done a very good job of rendering songs from the actual movie, so that's nice. The game is also graphically presentable. The sprites genuinely look like they were animated and came straight out of the movie, so I'm glad they went with that style as opposed to Jungle Book, which went for a very shaded look. Not that that's bad, but I think I prefer a game based on a movie to look like the movie, but that's just me. Once you beat the first level, if you got the Abu icon, you'll start a minigame, and holy shit, this minigame is cheap as hell. The whole point of the minigame is to get the collectibles that will fall. Usually gems, sometimes apples, and sometimes extra lives. You have to dodge pots the entire time, and later on you're going to be dodging barrels and some enemies. Abu can only take one hit, which makes this a pain in the ass, especially with the pots, because at some point the pots start falling randomly. It's the first taste of just how hard this game is going to get later. The cutscene before the second level is where we notice our first major story change. Instead of Aladdin meeting Jasmine and the guards coming to get him, taking him to the dungeon so Jafar can get him out and have him go to the Cave of Wonders, instead what happens is Jafar approaches Aladdin on the street dressed as the old man, and actually has Aladdin himself go out and collect the pieces of that beetle medallion that opened the Cave of Wonders. This is probably the most notable change in the plot. I think they did this to add more levels to the game, which admittedly is understandable. It's not a huge deal, but anyone who's seen the movie, and is there anyone who really hasn't seen that movie? Never mind. You're gonna notice the difference, but it didn't bother me, and I don't know why it would bother anybody. It's not like they changed the whole fucking plot. The second level is the desert, and this time you actually have an objective. See, some levels in the game actually have certain objectives or goals you have to accomplish. You have to keep collecting the beetle half. Every time you touch it, it'll fly away. You have to keep touching it until you get to the end of the level where you can finally collect it. The level itself has a lot of hidden passages, but all in all, it's not a really tough level if you know what you're doing. The third level is the Agora Rooftops, and holy shit does this level's music rock. I'm not just saying that because it sounds awesome, it's also my favorite song from Aladdin, but we're not going to get into that. This is also honestly my favorite level in the entire game. The whole point of this level is to track down the thief that has the other piece of the beetle. As it turns out, this is the same thing that in the actual movie Jafar actually paid to steal the beetle and give to him, but I guess they changed that to have a mini-boss for the game, but whatever. You have to keep collecting flutes during the entire course of this level. These flutes will summon enchanted rope that will fly you upwards. It's a creative level obstacle, I'll give it that, and it does keep with the Arabian theme, obviously. Now I'm gonna say this right now, this fucking mini-boss is the easiest motherfucking mini-boss I've ever had to deal with, ever. Truth be told, if there's anything not hard about Aladdin, it's the mini-bosses. Look at this, I am fucking raping this guy in the corner, he's not even trying to fight back, it's retarded, and he dies almost immediately. That was epic. Very climactic mini-boss. I mean, I at least expect him to fight back, come on! Of course, I'm bitching about difficulty now, I will be bitching about it for the opposite reason later, but we won't get into that yet. Then, immediately after you fight the mini-boss, you fight the actual boss of this level, who's the guard captain. He's a little bit irritating only because you have to hit him with apples because he's standing on a platform that's too high for you to reach with your sword. So you have to keep jumping over his barrels, yes, currently he's Donkey Kong, and throwing an apple in his face, and eventually you'll hit him with enough apples for him to die. It's a little bit tedious, and I'm not really a fan of it, but hey, whatever works. This is the point where I'll mention another collectible, the Genie Head. The Genie Heads will give you basically tokens to use in a slot machine after each level. You can win various stuff such as extra lives, extra gems, basically every other collectible in the game, and you can also hit a Jafar icon. If you hit the Jafar icon even once, you lose, and you lose all your Genie Heads that you would have used to get other items. It's a little bit tough, truth be told, but it can give you an extra gem or two, which could be useful later. Next up, we have the Sultan's Dungeon. I hate this level. And you know what? I shouldn't hate it. It's a very creative level with a lot of cool obstacles and a lot of cool level design ideas, but they had to fuck it up because of something really fucking stupid. I hate these fucking blocks to no end. These things right here. Jesus fucking Christ. You know, they're not that hard if I would stop phasing through them. I think that's the problem. Look at this. I am landing right on this. Are you seeing this? This is retarded. It's kind of weird because if you try to jump on that block from a different angle, you'll land just fine. I don't understand how some of these work. Sometimes I feel like I'm hitting them, and I'm not. Sometimes I feel like I'm not hitting them, and I am. It's a little confusing, and some seem to have better hit detection than others. I don't know what's going on half the time, and they're just all over the place. It's irritating. To be fair, I've never been killed by falling through a block. There's no bottomless pits in this level, and I'm not on a time limit like in Jungle Book, but it's very irritating when I know I'm landing on a block, and the game's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, well, fuck you too. The next level was the Cave of Wonders. This is a level that kind of confuses me, because looking at it, it looks absolutely nothing like the fucking Cave of Wonders from the movie, but you know what, we won't get into that, it's kind of a cool level. There's some weird enemy types here too, like there's these statues that will only try to attack you if you have your back turned, and the only time you're able to hit them is if you turn Aladdin around quick enough for him to notice that they actually move. You know, you'd think he'd learn after the first one, but no, you have to do this every fucking time. The bonus objective here is also to kill every single one of these weird monkey statues, which is kind of funny because these are the very statues that almost got Aladdin and Abu killed in the movie because Abu touched one. I guess the cave doesn't care if you destroy the treasure, just if you touch it. I don't know how that works, but whatever. This is also where the game starts getting very, very difficult. I think it's because of these fucking bats. They're so annoying. They do just as much damage as everybody else, and they're so difficult to hit. They're just irritating, and sometimes I barely see them because of the color contrast, or lack thereof in this case. Also, sometimes I'll fall and I'll land on a pit of spikes. It's fantastic. I love it. There's actually a mini-boss for this level too, and I don't think he's any harder than the Thief, but he's definitely more annoying because I keep having to go back and forth between these different platforms in order to swipe him. But if you hit him fast enough, he can't even get an attack off, and it's really not that difficult to fight as long as you keep going back and forth, back and forth. After that, you get the platform across water to get the lamp, and I died a lot here as a kid because it turns out water can kill you because Aladdin can't swim, which I think is fan-fucking-tastic. Once you travel up and get the lamp, the level ends. There's also a bonus stage for this level too, which I find to be a bit more difficult because there's bats you have to avoid, and by avoid I mean you have to kill them. Of course, killing them is irritating because if Abu gets hit even once by these fucking bats, you lose, which is just agonizing. The level after this, I hate. No, you don't understand. The escape is the most fucking ridiculous level in this entire game, and I fucking hate it. I cannot stress how ridiculously hard this level is. Okay, truth be told, with time and practice, the level can become a lot easier, but god damn it, all to hell, this level is where I always fucking died when I was a kid. Every single godforsaken time, except the one time, and one time only, I managed to beat this game legitimately. And I don't even remember how old I was, but do you have any idea how fucking happy I was that I fucking beat this godforsaken fucking level? Look at all the fucking lava! By the way, in case you didn't know, lava, much like water, is an insta-kill. At least the lava makes sense. The game also pulls an Indiana Jones too, because all these fucking boulders you have to run from and jump over holes to avoid them, which wouldn't be annoying if the game wouldn't trick you later, which I'll talk about in a second. I mean, look at this. You're supposed to avoid this boulder by jumping down here, but even if I crouch down while facing forward, the boulder still hits me. I have to jump down, turn around, and then crouch down, which, by the way, is very stressful for a 7-year-old. I just thought I'd throw that fucking out there. Oh my god, this level brings back such bad memories. It's annoying even now, and I'm 20. Here's where the game decides to just fucking trick you. Look, I think I can go up here. Oh, I better not do that shit. And can someone fucking tell me why gravity doesn't fucking work in this level? This boulder rolled up the fucking hill! Come on! The platforming areas where you're jumping over the lava wouldn't be that difficult enough for two things. Number one, there's a time constraint here because every platform you land onto this part will start to sink, so you can't waste time. Second of all, the lava likes to bubble, and if you get hit by the lava that's bubbling, it will slow down your jump. And by slow down your jump, I mean it will slow you down just enough that you will fall in the lava and you will die again. And I assure you, by the time you've gotten this far, you've probably died more than once. Even the end of the level feels like a death trap because you have to jump into oblivion, and much like in the movie, the magic carpet saves you. Which I guess would be cool if that level I just played wasn't ridiculously infuriating to me because of how fucking hard it is. This game is made for children, and I like a challenge much to the next person, but that level is ridiculous. Oh, you thought that was hard? Where do you get a load of this shit? Now you're flying on the magic carpet. This is a bit of a mini game, bit of a level. It's hard to explain. See, this level isn't one you actually have to beat. I think I know why the developers chose this tactic, but we'll talk about that in a second. The whole idea is to go where the genie hand points. If it points up, move up. If it points down, move down. And if it points to both, go all the way, either direction, doesn't matter. You're gonna get hit in the middle otherwise, because you have to dodge floating boulders while avoiding the fire behind you. Of course, you automatically do this, so you don't have to worry about it. This doesn't look that hard right now, I know. But it just gets faster and faster, and suddenly the game starts throwing question marks at you. And by question marks, I mean the genie hand suddenly becomes a question mark, as in, I don't fucking know, just guess. Guess! What do you mean, guess? I don't get more than one try at this. If I get hit once, I lose. This is fucking ridiculous. Fortunately, like I said, this isn't exactly a level, because you only get 3 tries. Once you die 3 times at this level, the game automatically skips it for you. Which I guess is kind of understandable, because that level gets so fucking fast later on, and I'm used to fast gameplay and quick reaction time. Even I have a problem with it. It's absurd. Sometimes I feel like you don't even have enough time to react, but like I said, it automatically skips you. The level after this is called Inside the Lamp. This one's kind of weird. It's based off that one musical montage in the movie where the genie puts Aladdin through all this weird shit. You think that wouldn't kill you as a level in the game, but trust me, it's very easy to die because there's a lot of bottomless pits here. This level wouldn't be very hard if not for 2 things that become very irritating later on. Number 1, the level has a lot of platforms like to change size. If they're too small, you can't stand on them. And if you don't judge the pattern properly, you'll end up jumping through them like an idiot. The other problem is that this level likes to fuck with your draw distance. Sometimes it feels like I only have just enough space to see the next platform, or occasionally I won't have any space to see the next platform and I feel like I'm jumping into nothing. But all in all, it's not nearly as hard as the escape, and it's an okay level overall. The next level was the Sultan's Palace. This one's a little weird to me. I don't know how I feel feel about it. It's not really much of a level. It's only challenging because there's so many fucking enemies here that will hit you. There's fish that fly out at you. There's guards everywhere. It's absurd. You also have to jump on the magic carpet and fly around a lot, and the carpet's movements are random, and sometimes the carpet will automatically put you in range of an enemy and you have to avoid the attack or kill the enemy before you run into it. Why the magic carpet would purposely fly you into an enemy, I will never understand, but I'm gonna try not to question it. There's also this weird part where you have to pull a Mario and jump up to free a Boo from this cage. Don't know how I got there. Don't know what I'm doing here, because, you know, now that I think about the story, at this point, even in the game, kind of falls apart because it doesn't really explain why you're suddenly going back to the palace, or why Abu got captured, or anything like that, but what the fuck ever. It's also a fairly short level if you know exactly what to do, and like I said, the only problem you're really gonna run into is the fact that there's so many enemies and so many things that will kill you. There's also a boss here. It's Iago on that weird machine from the movie. What he's doing and why he's doing it, that is never explained, but the whole point of this boss fight is to throw apples at Iago while destroying the ghosts that are randomly generated by the machine until he eventually succumbs. It's honestly a fairly easy boss fight, as long as you can avoid the ghosts properly. Last level is Jafar's palace, and he got really happy with the traps when it came to designing his new palace. There are spike pits everywhere, there are pendulum balls of death, there are guards all over the place. It's a little nuts. There's some points where you have to fly around the magic carpet here too, but honestly, I don't feel like this level is very hard. I felt like the Sultan's Palace gave me more trouble, but maybe at this point I'm so used to dealing with so many enemies because of the Sultan's Palace level that it doesn't bother me. Once you get through the level, you'll reach Jafar, who's the final boss, for reasons I feel I don't need to explain. For whatever twisted reason, even though he's standing right there, you can't just walk up and hit him with your sword. You have to throw apples at him, which I think is fucking stupid. Jafar has two forms and is definitely the hardest boss in the entire game. His first form, he'll do nothing but try to drag you into him, which I will repeat, is there any reason why you can't just hit him with your sword at that point? But whenever you touch Jafar, it actually hurts you. So his entire battle tactic is to use his tractor beam from his staff to drag you into him, which is a little strange. His second form you'll remember from the movie as that giant cobra he turned into. This is where things get a little irritating because he constantly throws fire at you. This is also about the point in time where I always seem to run out of apples, and because even though he's a giant snake, I still can't slash him with my sword. So what I have to do is jump up on these platforms, which will immediately spawn fire, all the while he's throwing more fire at me, jump over him without landing on top of him because that'll hurt me, grab the apples that have randomly spawned on the other side of the screen, throw them at him, then repeat because you only get 4 at a time, and jump to the other side of the screen, get those apples, and throw them again. He has a pattern and he never changes it, so if you figure out how to avoid the fire properly and consistently, it can be a very easy fight. And once you beat him, the game just kind of ends. You get this little animation of Aladdin and Jasmine flying away on the magic carpet, a pretty good 16-bit rendition of A Whole New World, a little kissing animation with Aladdin and Jasmine, and roll credits. That's the end. I guess it's a pretty decent ending. All in all, my final thoughts are, it's a very good game. It's got a few minor issues with some of the levels, like the dungeon with the platforms that I like to phase through, and that fucking ridiculous escape level, but it's challenging and not nearly as easy as Jungle Book. In that regard, I think older gamers would have a lot more fun with it. This is one that, well, only served to frustrate me as a kid. Not that younger gamers wouldn't like it too, but in terms of beating it, it's gonna be hard for all ages. I think this is the only point where the game falls short. Like I said in the last review, shouldn't Disney games be marketed towards kids? You wouldn't want to make a ridiculously hard game out of a children's movie. It seems a little strange. Not that I don't want my games challenging, and I do like the game, but some of the parts just seemed a little too hard for kids. But it is a good game, and while I did complain about some of the levels being completely unfair, to be realistic, the game never got so unfair that I feel the need to call it a bad game because of it. So until next time, guys, I'm Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell. I love that animation.